Welcome back, my friends, to episode 24 of Beyond Bricks and Mortar. Now, today I'm joined by influencer, tastemaker, and real estate maestro, Madison Sutton. A fellow colleague at Serhant, Madison has made her way, having amassed a following of over 100,000 on TikTok, touring homes all across New York, branding herself as the NYC agent. Now, on this episode, we actually don't talk about any of that. What we talk about here is actually what I've come to respect the most about Madison, is her absolute embrace of authenticity. She speaks her mind, she wears her mind, and she showcases her mind for the world to see. Now, this is something that I truly respect, given that I genuinely believe that in order to succeed in this business, you have to do it in alignment with what you actually love, with your true identity. I have not met anyone who has embraced her true identity the way Madison has. This conversation in and of itself is incredibly insightful because it goes deep into the principles of authenticity and how we apply that to create success in our work. This is the only interview/conversation that I've done on this podcast that I've done zero prep for. And maybe that's because Madison is someone who's so easy to talk to, but there's an incredible flow in this conversation that I felt prep was actually unnecessary, that it would not do justice to the value that I wanted to extract from a conversation like this. As always, I'm incredibly excited for you guys to listen to this one. Madison has become a really great friend, and watching her work and develop in this business has been really, really impressive. For all you new real estate agents out there, even the ones that have been in the business for a while, you can certainly learn something just from listening to Madison. So sit back and relax and listen and watch all of this episode because every minute is worth it. If you are new here, welcome. New episodes of Beyond Bricks and Mortar are every single Wednesday, so be sure to hit that like and subscribe and the follow and all the buttons. You know how this goes. And now, here she is, without any further ado, Madison Sutton. Welcome.
Hi.
We actually spoke earlier today in a business context, but you inspired me because my intention was initially to do a bunch of prep, as I normally do for these types of conversations, but you are a very interesting character.
I mean, I'll take that.
Yes, and you had told me that every time you do any sort of public appearance, you generally don't prep. No. So I thought that I would make this a prepless episode, and we would just have a conversation, open forum, and try to crush this for the audience.
I love that.
So usually I have a piece of paper in front of me with questions, thoughts, dynamics, different things. We're going to skip all that, and we're just going to talk.
Lovely. Let's get into it.
All right. I love it. Can I offer you something to drink?
Surprise me. Anything but
I only
tequila.
have whiskey and tequila. So I have an amazing bourbon. This is like my favorite bottle. I've bought it many times over. And then I have a few different single malts.
I will let you surprise me. I'm actually allergic to tequila.
Oh, you are? Okay. Well,
Mildly.
These are sealed and haven't been opened yet, so you're good.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I won't turn down a margarita. But will it...
You'll just accept the rashes and the stuff that comes with it? Or do you just carry an EpiPen for tequila?
No, it's not even that. It's the same with bananas. I grew up eating bananas. And a few years ago, I was just sitting in LA I lived in LA doing LA things with a bunch of friends. I was eating a banana. I'm like, guys, don't you just fucking love bananas?
Bananas are great.
And I'm like, you know how they make your mouth tingly like pineapple? And they were like, nah,
yeah.
dude.
Pineapple, you get itchy from pineapple.
Yeah. And that's how, that moment, they were like, you're allergic to bananas.
Bananas.
I still eat them all the time. But same with tequila. I'm like, oh, you know how mezcal specifically.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, it makes your mouth itchy, and they're like, it's not an acquired taste thing. It's,
right.
You're just allergic to something there.
I'm not a big tequila person. I really only got these for the event, for the time when somebody requests tequila. You know, in the context of a conversation like this, I like whiskey. The only cocktail I really enjoy out is a martini. But yeah, my go-to is whiskey. I love arak. Have you ever had arak?
No.
Yeah, arak is an Israeli Lebanese drink. It's made from anise, and it forms a cloudy look when you add it to ice or water.
Kind of like sake?
Kind of. Well, only unfiltered sakes are cloudy. You know. Filtered sakes are clear. Mm-hmm. This is there's some kind of effect with the anise or something that makes it look cloudy once you add some ice or a drop of water to it. But it's great. It's very strong. And it's definitely the Sephardic Jewish thing in me that it likes to drink it.
Let's do it.
You want to do some whiskey? Some
Yeah,
bourbon?
I'll do some.
Okay. Would you like some ice?
Should I have ice? I'm not a big bourbon drinker.
So
but-
this is 115 proof. So it's really, really strong. Generally, you add like a drop of water to something
Okay.
like this, or, a couple cubes of ice.
All right, let's do it.
All right.
You're going to be
take care.
calling Bernadette. You're going to be like, hey, your girl, she can't hold her liquor like we thought she could.
No, I'm sure you'll be fine. I mean, we don't like get hammered on this podcast, but we just like to loosen up a little bit. I myself am like a little hesitant to drink because I'm just finishing up a 72-hour fast.
Oh.
So, yeah. So I don't know if like breaking my fast with bourbon is necessarily smart, but that doesn't
Or
mean
it could be the best way to break your fast.
it could be the best way to break my fast. You might be right about that. I'm gonna just pour a drop in here, neat,
Okay.
and I'll just like.
Okay, we're not keeping score. You're good.
Yeah, that's all right. How are you?
Good. Cheers.
Cheers to you. Thank you for
cheers.
being here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
So sophisticated. You're like,
Tell me what you think.
it's something I would give my dad.
I hear
There we
that.
go.
I hear that.
That's the best way I can describe it.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, of
I know how
course.
busy you are. I think that, when I first came to Sirhant, you were also first coming to Sirhant.
Mm-hmm.
And, our kind of like our entry happened at the same time. So I got like a first look at your story a little bit. You were super active on social media at the time. You still are. And I think the thing that I found most interesting about you is that you embody this sort of change in character. Or at least when I first started at Sirhant, you had a different look to you pretty much every single day.
Yes.
Like but it was clear that it was very well thought out, and it was almost like you went according to just how you felt that day. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe it was something that inspired you on a day-to-day basis, but I find that to be really, really interesting because I'm always trying to go the route of deploying as much self as we can into the work. That's how we fall in love with the work. But I'd be curious to learn a little bit about how you approach your public persona. Is it something that's more unique to you and something that is fulfilling for you personally? Or do you genuinely wish to share almost a different identity of yourself to your audience on a daily basis?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I actually spoke about this last year in Australia, this exact topic on authenticity. So
What were you doing in Australia?
So I was a keynote speaker at,
okay.
they have like their massive real estate conference each year. It's called ARIC, and Ryan actually is speaking there right now. And I thought I was getting scammed. So I just got this email from a guy named Tom Panos, and he was like, he's kind of like not like a Gary V type, but like a very like intense type.
An inspiring
and he was
figure.
like, you need to speak in Australia. But he actually didn't even invite me to speak in Australia. He was like, we'll Zoom you in, and we'll pay you X amount, XYZ. And I sent it to our team. I'm like, is this spam? And I looked on my Instagram, and he had just followed me, and I looked him up, and he had like a huge following and things like that. So I'm like, okay, this might be real.
It's legit.
Well, it was so interesting because earlier I had just, I'd never really traveled alone. That was like a big goal of mine last year. I was just afraid to. And so I was like, I'm going to travel alone this year. And then like 5 or 6 days later, I had done a piece with an Australian publication a few weeks before. And the editor was like, hey, we have this team in Australia who's coming to New York. This is like their celebration trip. Like they hit like XYZ in sales. They love Sirhant. They love everything about Sirhant. Could you like give them a tour of the office? And I was like, yeah, sure. So they connect me with the team, and it's like 2 days before we're supposed to meet in the office. I'm actually working right in Flatiron. I was doing some consulting for a startup at the time. And they were like, hey, super last minute. It's like in 30 minutes. We have 4 seats to the Knicks. Do you want to come? And I was like, yeah.
Hell yeah.
I was like, screw the office tour. Like, we're going to the Knicks.
Yeah.
And so I went with them and connected with them. And they were this like phenomenal team from Australia. So then we like fast forward like 2 weeks. Like I'm getting all these weird signs about Australia. Then I get this email, and like I literally get chills when I talk about it because I think it's like the coolest
Like
fucking
it's
thing in the
calling
world.
you. It's calling you.
I'm such a believer in like what a lot of people call like manifesting.
Sure.
And I don't necessarily think it's like if you put it in the universe, like it'll put out. I think, there's a lot of things like that. But for me, it's more a mindset shift. When you look for opportunities, you'll find them.
Yes. And you still have to put in the work.
Oh, 100%.
Like we're meant to put in the effort.
Oh, yeah.
And then the opportunity will certainly come your way.
Well, so then we're going back and forth, and they're like, we want you to zoom in. And I'm like, for the same amount of money, you can have me in Australia. And they're like, well, how much would we have to pay you more? What's up? I'm like, travel and expenses. Like, fly me fucking coach. I don't care. Just get me there. I'd never been to Australia, obviously. I went. It was like the most thrilling 2 weeks of my life, I think.
You were there for 2 weeks?
I was there for 2 weeks.
Wow. So you really made a trip out of it.
I did. And so the conference was like, well, you've experienced speaking publicly. And I'm like, yeah, of course. Totally. I'd never done public speaking before. Yeah. And so it's the day before the conference. I have what I think is my speech, and it's a 30-minute keynote. So it's not even like a small time frame.
Yeah.
And they're, can we just do a quick sound check with you? I'm like, great. Yeah, I go. And I kid you not, it's a WrestleMania stage.
Like round.
Square, but like completely around. There's like this.
So you're not like standing at a podium. You're moving about the stage.
Well, that's what I thought I was going to be doing.
Yeah.
And so I'm there and I'm just like, what am I going to do? And they're like, do you want to do like your whole thing? And I'm like, no. We'll just hit like high level on this. And so I'm kind of like internally freaking out. So fast forward the next day. I'm the first in-person speaker. We actually got Ryan to speak virtually, but before me, the lineup was Reese Witherspoon, Ryan Serhant, and then first in person, Madison Sutton.
Love that.
And my parents were like zooming in live, and I remember Ryan called me, and I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And he was like, well, you're not a doctor. No one will die. You'll live. Like, go out there. He's like, where's space?
You're not about to do heart surgery.
Well, I was like, I was just like literally shaking.
Well, public speaking is considered to be like the number one fear that exists in the world.
100%.
Like before death, it's public speaking.
Oh, I get it now. Yeah. And so he gives me like a bit of a pump up. He's like, look, if you go out there and you just bomb it, no one's going to remember in 10 minutes. And he was like, too many things I've bombed. He's like, I've messed up so many times. And I was like, great. I'll try not to add to that. And it's 15. It's literally like, I think like it was 17 minutes before I'm supposed to go on. And I'm like looking at my notes and I'm like, I hate this all. I absolutely, every single thing. I hate it. This isn't me. And
the speech you wrote.
The speech I wrote. And I was like, I'm going to wing it. And my friend who was with me, he's Australian. He works for a firm there called Place in Kangaroo Point. He was like, you're just going to wing it. And I'm like, get me some espresso. We're going to go out here and just hope for the best.
Yeah.
And looking back on it, speaking on that stage, I'm talking about authenticity. And like, again, like I get chills from this moment because that was like probably one of the best moments of my life. And I talk about one of these things, The Alter Ego Effect. It's a book, phenomenal book. And in it, it talks about like what's called the Clark Kent effect, which is how it's been known if you talk to like CEOs and people of that stature, that if you and Martin Luther King Jr. actually did this, he would put glasses on before he spoke because the perception of him was that it was more professional. That
he was smarter if he was wearing glasses.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've seen things like that before, like people who, like whether it's a banker or an attorney will purposely shift their tie a little bit to the left or right. It looks a little bit messy.
Yeah,
it helps them appear weaker in the room.
Oh.
And then they can like strike, from a more unexpected place. Like this small little change in their look can really change the dynamics of the room.
Oh, I believe it 100%. So I was like a very athletic yet socially awkward child. And when I was about 13 or 14, I realized that I felt like everyone had a best friend. And I was like, where's like my like token best friend? I had a lot of friends, but like I wasn't connecting with people in the same way and capacity that like my peers around me were. So I started studying body language for about 10 years. And I mean like macro expressions.
What
micro.
goes into the study of body language?
It starts with a few books. It's like, it's like the slippery slope of
That's
cognitive
interesting.
science. Um, and yeah, so it started with like a few books, and again, I'm like 14 and trying to source, like, basically it was, I didn't realize it at the time, but it was out of this like almost like desperate desire to connect with people. And a few years later, I got diagnosed with ADHD amongst a few other things. But I kind of figured, if with body language, like if you take, like, you're looking this way, feet are this way, XYZ, bump, 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 that equals this emotion.
Right.
And so it wasn't like I lacked empathy. It was just, I felt like people couldn't perceive me in like my truest form. And I think I was a 14-year-old. I was craving connection, like, and acceptance and, general love. But then, even like in the past like 18 months, I've taken courses on like macro and micro expressions where they flash. You have an eighth of a second to identify what that person's feeling. And then you like do these like tests and things like that. And it's like one of the coolest things that's helped me so much in the business world, not only from the actual knowledge itself, but from the concept of being more present. It's kind of like when you're speaking with someone, you can tell this person's already thinking about what they're going to say back. They're not actually listening to me. But when you're so focused on someone's face that if this muscle moves up, you can like tell that something you said disgusted them in a way. Or if they like look, the obvious one is like, oh, is this person looking up this before they speak to me? They're lying to me. But it's just kind of like taking these little
so you
things.
must really deploy that in your interactions with people in business. That must help a lot.
Oh, tremendously.
Yeah. Wow. So you must have my number. That's so interesting. What would you say can you point out anything in my body language from our interactions? I know they've been minimal.
It's interesting because this is like one of the first times we've like talked in a non-stressful environment, like one-on-one. You smile with your eyes a lot.
Do I?
Yeah.
That's interesting. What does that mean?
So essentially, like, your eyes, they tilt a certain way whenever, like, that's when people say smize, right? It's like this, right? This is like a terrible example, but it's like this. And your eyes get smaller when you're like, trying to either portray genuine happiness or that. But it's also like a general sense of like openness. So like when people are like more closed off, and there was a meeting that I was in a few months or like over a year ago at this point, where I told them I kind of did this skill. And then for several weeks, I took notes on body language during meetings. And you would have, we'll call him John, be pitching and thinking like he's like crushing this fucking sale. Like, we're going to get this listing. And I'm like, he doesn't want to talk to you. He wants to talk to them. And you can just tell.
And you can see that in the body language.
And you can see people close off, and then just like anything from like leaning back to forward to like this to like this, but this, like they're very like ready to leave a conversation. And a lot of people are like, there's like a general surface level, and that's why I'm like fascinated by like macro and micro expressions, is because you can't hide them. Yeah. And when you're taught it,
I'm like afraid of you now.
You should be. But like I don't think
I don't ever want to be on the other side of a negotiating table with you. I'm going to just be like stern faced the whole time.
Here's the thing. I am someone who, I'm not someone that I think a lot of people would consider like in sales. I soft sell. My sell is like totally a soft sell. I love connecting with people.
Yeah, my sale is also soft. It's very soft. I lead with connection always. Yeah, that's why I love hospitality. I really love that world because, in our world, clients, they just want to feel seen and heard and understood. And there is like that, you work in both commercial and residential real estate, but there is that core difference between those two markets. In commercial real estate, it's a business of the brain. We're making decisions based on numbers. If the deal makes sense, you make the deal. But residential is a business of the heart. It's emotional, and that's why connection becomes number one. So you reach a point where you start getting listings without pitching them. That comes from just the intuition the client feels in their connection with you. So that I 100% lead that way, and I try to be extremely empathetic when it comes to negotiating, especially when you're negotiating on a home or something that's personal to someone. Like, the gallery on 25th Street's a great example. Yeah. That's a commercial property, but it's not really a commercial seller. This is emotional for them. This is like a significant chapter of their lives, they're now selling it and moving on. So it's like you have to manage the emotions going through that process. And the best way to do that is by deploying empathy. It's just by helping them feel seen and heard and understood. And that's the definition of hospitality. That the hospitality is like, it's not service. Service is a sequence of things that we do with consistency. It's a skill set, right? But hospitality is the spirit of the whole thing. It's like the emotional response.
I think a lot of agents, so I think one of the advantages, yet disadvantages I had coming into the space is I didn't really have a mentor, and I'm about 5 years in real estate. So I didn't have a mentor until like about a year ago. And the ones I did kind of had never really knew what to do with me because I wasn't this like money hungry, like shark. Like I'm not a killer at the end of the day. But what I am is a great listener who will hold your hand. So
that's key in our world, in the residential world especially. That's absolutely key. And yeah, I think like I specifically take on new agents. I generally don't look for agents with years of experience. I like to take on new agents because I like to help them in the pursuit of trying to fall in love with the work.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, I think that our business, this is why I led with this question of your identity.
Oh, yes.
And we'll get back to that. But yeah, I think like you are the embodiment of authenticity, and that is extremely important in our business. The only way to fall in love with the work and to retain a position in real estate, this business is a revolving door. People are always entering and exiting. So the only way to retain your position is to do it according or in parallel with what you really love, the thing that really revs your engine, the thing that really gets you going. So it's interesting, like when I see you embodying a different identity every day or every other day, it's like, wow, like, real estate is like, especially in New York City, it's such a melting pot of a city and so many different kinds of people and demographics. You almost have the ability to serve any demographic in this city. Doesn't matter if they're the most sophisticated individual or the weirdest person you'll ever meet. Like you can almost embody that character and be with them in the conversation and understand them.
Well, I think elements of it are one, respect, right? I may not be the most conservative person. I don't consider myself absurdly like not conservative or scandalous. However, if I'm going to meet with a certain type of person who has a certain set of values, I want to be respectful of that. So there's an element of that there. But then also in this like quest of like authenticity, I think a lot of people forget that you can be authentic and change. So I'm 27. I'm trying to figure out who I am more so now than ever. Yeah. My frontal lobe, we're just finishing up here. And it's really, it's a cool thing, especially like I change my hair all the time and that's kind of like what I'm made fun of for the most. But at the same time, like, I'm not gonna, like, it doesn't change me. And if I want to see, like, if my hair color is, like, the most controversial thing you can say about me, then you don't know much about me.
Right.
But I'll take it any day of the week. But I really love this journey I'm on, finding, myself not only in, like, a personal friendship, where do I want to be in 10 years kind of way, but then also defining the standards and the characteristics that I'm going to take with me for the rest of my career.
Yeah.
And I think acknowledging that those shift. I think people who are saying, these are my core values and they're never going to change, blah, blah, blah. If you set those at 25 and you don't change them until you're 45.
You don't evolve. Yeah.
No, or you're lying to yourself.
Yeah.
So I think with my clients personally, like they've seen this journey of me from the pandemic. And that's when I first started posting on TikTok and I didn't know what I was doing, to kind of becoming more established and more articulate and being able to voice things. And, I may believe something today and it's, a bit paradoxy, but it could change tomorrow. Now, does that mean I believed any less of that concept on that day? No.
Right.
It just means that I'm open to saying that was wrong, or this concept has evolved or upgraded or changed in some minds.
I could see how that can be paradoxical.
100%.
Would you say that you have ever encountered an identity crisis? Like you weren't quite sure where you're most comfortable?
Every day.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, there are things you can change and there's things you can, you can't change. And I think for me, it's Sorry, I just heard that.
Sounds of the Office.
Very profoundly. I'm like, there are things you can change and there's sounds of the Office. But at the end of the day, it's tough sometimes. And you feel like, especially with like my world being, I have a clip where I'm doing this like podcast called Bar Talks. And I'm sitting across from a bar owner I know, and basically they capture real life stories of people, whether you were in fashion 20 years ago, it could be someone sitting with their grandpa. It's just like this really cool series of stories. And there's a clip I posted that I was terrified to post where I cry in it because I am like talking about, especially at that point in my life, I was like, I hate social media. I'm like, I can't think about, like, I don't know who I am. I know who this person is. I know like who the person I'm portraying to be is. And like sometimes I wish I didn't think about it so much. And at that point, it wasn't that I hadn't acknowledged that it's like a up and down thing. Like sometimes I have a really healthy relationship with it, just like sometimes I'm really good at working out, and other times I don't. So it's kind of identifying those moments where you don't and moving past that and just kind of, again, giving yourself some grace. I think that's like the biggest thing that people forget to do, especially when building an identity, whether it be online, at the office, at home.
Or building a business, because, you know, this is a business that requires a tremendous amount of patience. You know, and a big part of that is also figuring out what's your niche, what's the thing that makes you tick, what's your mission, you know, what's your identity. Again, this is such an emotional business, and a lot of people enter it thinking that there's a binary way to do it, that there's a formula in which we're supposed to follow. But I just find that that's really false. You know, it's really about embodying your true character and, you know, working with the people who you consider to be your ideal clients. Fortunately, in New York City, we're offered that opportunity in a bit more of an easy way than you would in another market.
Well, I feel like the thing I dislike about most agents, not like an actual like dislike, but I feel like the perception is if you ever ask an agent how the market is, they're going to be like, it's great. What do you want to do? Do you want to buy? If it's great to buy. Do you want to sell? It's great to sell.
They go straight there.
And they don't let themselves just say, it's not the best time for you to sell right now. As much as I would love that commission and love this, it's going to be hell. We're going to list it. It's going to sit. You want this price. Will it recover? Like, I don't know.
I think it's less about advising on direction and more about figuring out what the client actually wants. Because if they want to sell, they want to sell.
Yes.
You know, so it's fine to advise them against selling given market conditions, but you never really know what's going on in their head and what's going on in their life. Maybe they just need the access to the capital. So I just think in those types of interactions, how's the market? You know, it should just be more about your personal experience. Like, you know, it's a challenging market, but we're keeping busy. What choice do we have? You know, or, you know, again, just lead with connection.
Yeah.
You know, what's on your mind? Are you thinking of making a jump? Listen, this is what the market is showing us at this moment in time. At the end of the day, a property that's priced and positioned well in New York City always sells. Even if that means that like days on market is expanding, ballooning a little bit, at some point in time, a sale happens. You know, it's just about getting as many people through the door as possible. That's where the magic of great marketing comes in. That's where the Sirhan effect finds its home. You know.
Speaking of the Sirhan effect, like even just now, right? I just learned something. You have so many incredible people, or whether it's like learning something or learning a way to approach something at Sirhan, where this is like continuously evolving and just compounding, where I feel like my experiences, I came from some other brokerages. One was a small mid-sized firm, Highline Residential, incredible tech. The other was Brown Harris Stevens. And no one understood why I went to BHS. That was a time of my life. But coming to Sirhan, people I feel like don't have this like fear of sharing knowledge and having a difference of opinion. And I think that's been like one of the most rewarding things. So like, again, like what you just told me, I'm like, you're right. I should approach it more like that and not seem so authentic to myself, even though that is authentic to me. But it's also about, like you said, empathy.
Well, the first thing you said is more authentic to a real estate agent, less authentic to you personally. So
okay. Elaborate.
Well, you said, you know, oh, it might not be the best time for you to buy. You know, you're just taking the opposite approach of a salesperson, but it's still a salesperson. Because you think that that's your door, your entryway into actually getting the business and getting that home sold.
100%, yeah.
Right. So it's actually, the difference is you want to focus on the personal element, lead with connection, and not even think about the lead at all.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you said you've been doing this 5 years?
Yeah, 5
Yeah.
years.
So it took me like 11 years to learn this, you know.
Yeah.
That's part of the reason why I like working with new agents, because my mission as a leader is to try to help them accelerate their success a little bit. It took me 5 years to start making real money and finding success in real estate. I think a big part of that is because I didn't join a team. I was very arrogant in my approach when I first started. But along the way, I found myself, I found my world as a creator, as someone who loves hospitality and loves to be the bridge in those two worlds. And I think, you have to lead with authenticity. You have to lead from a place of friendship and a place of empathy and a place of understanding. And yes, it's a more prolonged approach. It takes longer to get the listing, to get the deal done. But I think this is, and I've said this 100 times on this podcast, this is genuinely what I think Ryan means when he says close on day one. Mm-hmm. It's not about closing a deal. It's about solidifying that connection, that relationship. The question becomes, why would I go anywhere else? Mm-hmm. And to your point about Serhant being a more of an open environment or a collaborative environment, I don't remember exactly the way you phrased it, but I think that that's exactly where the business needs to go. It needs to move a little bit away from competitiveness and a little bit more about collaborativeness. Is that even a word, collaborativeness? But the idea being that there's plenty of business for all of us, right? And if you are representing a buyer and I'm representing a seller, there's no reason for us to have a contentious negotiation and to try to win. Mm-hmm. There's nothing to win here. We both want the same thing. We both want to get a deal done. Mm-hmm. We both want to do right by our client. We want to feel proud of the work, proud of what we did, and we want to make money, and we want to also enjoy the process. So understanding those things, it makes a lot more sense for us to just be candid with each other. For you to come to me, if I'm the listing agent, to say, what does your client need in order to make this deal? Well, my client needs $7 million. My client's really at 5.5, but let me see what I can do. Let's see how we can work this out, how we can engineer it. And then this way I can advise you, okay, present an offer at 5.5, and I will convince my client to counter. I will present it enthusiastically. It's like working together to engineer a deal. That's also what Ryan means when he says we work for the deal. And the relationship that you and I have as brokers, as colleagues, that's the relationship that lasts forever. Clients actually come and go. But the relationships we have with our colleagues, with our peers, those are the things that last forever. We can't burn those bridges. Otherwise, we'll never be able to effectively get deals done in the future. And that's why the community of us, of the top agents in the industry, is so small. Mm-hmm. There's 50,000, 40,000 agents in New York City, but there's a very small community of us that see each other on the other sides of the deal sheet. So, and that's really coming from that place, like working together collaboratively.
So my question is, coming into this, I have one example. Just I had a broker who I remember I called. It was the day of. She had an open house. It wasn't by appointment only. It was just an open house. And I had a client who was all cash. She was a lovely friend of mine. And I called her and I was like, hey, we're thinking about swinging by. And she was like, is this a Zillow lead? And if it's a Zillow lead, you can just tell me. And I was like,
what do you mean?
She was. I don't even know. I think I've never been spoken to in that sense where this woman just did not like me. She was like, if you can't get leads and you have to get your leads on Zillow, maybe you shouldn't be coming to this listing.
She just doesn't understand how the market works.
Well, and I was shocked. I was first of all, no, it's not, a Zillow lead, but that shouldn't also matter. At the end of the day, no, I'm bringing a qualified buyer. And she was like, do you think it's are they truly qualified? Do you think you have a client who would be able to pay this amount? And she was on the speakerphone. My boyfriend was right there. And he's looking at me and I'm looking at his face. And so my boyfriend, he's also autistic. And so his expressions are so he was bewildered.
Visible, yeah.
And I was like, okay, it's not just me. And literally last week, it was so funny. Another agent who I know came up to me and they were like, by any chance, you know so-and-so? And I was like, she's the worst. And he was like, she is literally the worst. And she had that experience as well. And while I do 100% think when you have two agents who are working for the deal, it's a great deal.
Yeah.
My question to you is, like, given the experience I just told you, how would you combat that? Because I think also, like, I'm 27. Like, when I'm speaking to someone who is, older than me, it's a bit intimidating sometimes. And at the end of the day, the character, speaking of authenticity, the character I've developed who handles this when maybe I can't, she knows how to deal with it. But it's always interesting to hear how other...
So tell me again. So this person is the seller that you were talking to, or the seller's agent?
No, it was the seller's agent.
Seller's agent.
Yeah.
Okay. So, if it was me, my approach I would try to really disarm that conversation. I would try to really almost change the subject. Be like, almost in a joking way, like, what do you have against Zillow leads? I love Zillow leads. They make me money, and you open up the door to create a little bit more of a casual format in the conversation, make it a little bit less professional.
Okay.
And again, lean into connection. Like you're an expert judge of body language. Mm-hmm. So maybe the next chapter of your world becomes really studying voice and understanding where you can break in.
Okay.
There's always going to be a moment in time where someone will reveal something to you. Like if she said that to me on the phone, I would have been like, wow, you must be so frustrated by what has walked through the door so far on this listing. Have you seen some riffraff come through this door?
Interesting.
And then now she's going to start, oh my God, you have no idea. Yeah, start telling you a story. Like whenever I call a for sale by owner or an expired listing to try to pitch them, as soon as they pick up the phone, I'm literally giving it away right now. As soon as they pick up the phone, before I say anything else, I just say, how many brokers have called you today? And then the response is like, oh, so many. Like, you guys are all the same, and you want this, and you want that, and you want this, and you want that. I'm like, yeah, Alexa, I know. I'm on a long lineup of people who are annoying you today. How's it been going so far? Have you gotten anyone qualified through the door? Like just opening up the door to conversation until eventually he tells me he's a doctor, until eventually he tells me that he does all this great work overseas. All of a sudden it's a 30-minute conversation. All of a sudden I'm asking him to go have a martini with me the next night. And it's not about like, let me come and see your home and give you my pitch package. Let's just develop connection. You might consider the day where you decide to hire a broker. Mm-hmm. If that day comes, we'll talk about me being in the consideration line, but at least let me give you my perspective on the market. You won't walk away from the conversation without feeling like you retained some value.
Oh.
So you really want to remove the interest in getting this lead from the conversation because it radiates. It radiates in our voice, in our body language. It's very clear to sellers, and brokers are in the top 3 most hated category of people that exist in New York City.
Oh my God.
It's brokers, lawyers, contractors. All 3 of those categories are vast conglomerates of people that are vastly hated, right? And brokers get a bad rap because of exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
We just lean so heavily into this car salesman tactic, and it's really disappearing fast. Like it's becoming far more about connection, about getting personal with this.
It's interesting because I see it almost as more of a generational thing.
Yeah, I think so.
And I think social media has definitely affected this. And the reason I think that is I had my first MySpace when I was 8, which is kind of like, oof.
I had a MySpace too.
But you weren't an 8-year-old on MySpace.
I don't think I was 8. No, I got my first email address at 7 years old.
Oh, really? How old are you?
I'm 33.
Oh, I didn't realize you're only
Similar
5.
age.
Yeah.
How old did you think I was?
I don't know. You have a kid, right?
I have 2.
Yeah, that's a lot older than I am.
2 little girls.
That's awesome.
I remember I met your mother at the 22nd Street event or another event.
Yes.
And
Mom comes a lot.
Yeah, I met her. And I think your mom also asked me are you married? Do you have children? I'm like, yeah, I have 2 little girls. And then she looks at you like, come on.
Well, so, I mean, it's also with dating in New York. I'm dating a wonderful guy right now, but I remember I was seeing this guy on and off for 2 or 3 years. And finally I was like, what are we doing? I don't get it. What are we doing? And he was like, I'm only 31. And I was like, you are totally right. I'm like robbing the cradle right now. Like, you haven't experienced life, this and that. And it's just so different than in other cities. So, like, age is such an interesting, like, dynamic. But to kind of go back to our other point, like, I grew up with social media. Like, that's all I had. And so I think the idea of whenever I first started wanting to, like, post these videos again, it was, like, right before the pandemic. I just went over to Triple Mint, and they were like, oh, we don't do videos. Like, we don't take, like, and then BHS was like, we don't take photos of the bathrooms. And I was like, but why wouldn't you do videos so more people can see it?
Yeah,
And
the bathroom thing, I understand.
The bathroom one, yeah, they can be rough.
Not even rough. It's just like you don't need to reveal too much information when you're marketing a home. Like, for me, I have like a 10 image max rule, even on a massive listing, because, you know, like the images, this is we're really going down the rabbit hole here, but like this is another thing that's really changed in our industry that most brokers have not, most agents have not caught on yet, is that when you photograph a home, your mission, your goal should be to tell a story. It's not to reveal as much space as you can in the photos. You know, this is like, most agents believe you stand in the corner of the room, you take as big of a shot as you can, make the room look as big as possible, but that doesn't offer any sort of feeling of what it's like to actually live in that space. You know, every home tells a story, and what we're counting on is the person who walks through the door and falls in love.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that pay a premium. Again, it's emotional. So the question becomes, how do we get that person through the door? You know, you have to share the story of the home. Like, I hate when I see a listing that's been like virtually renovated and changed and all this stuff. Like, okay, you're selling a home that needs a gut job. Embrace that and market it like such. You know, tell the story of what's there at this moment in time. Give the buyer the forum to see with their own eyes what's possible. You know, so instead of a picture of a giant room, show me a picture of what it feels like to sit in a chair by the window in that room. That, to me, shares the feeling of the home. And that is why, like, the thumbnail image on Street Easy and all these websites is the most important part of your marketing. The most important part, because the deal starts at the click, right? Like, that's,
100%.
We're going after the click.
Yeah.
So you need a photo that's visually captivating, that's visually arresting. If you are searching on the Upper East Side for 1 to 3 million condos and co-ops, 1 to 2 bedrooms, you're looking at hundreds of options, hundreds. And it doesn't matter how long you've been in the business, nobody has time to sift through all those options. They are going to click on the ones that grab them, though. And most often, unless it's an address like 880 Fifth Avenue or 900 Fifth Avenue or 1010 Park, like, you're going to click on the ones that just grab you in that photo.
Yeah.
You know? So this is where things have shifted in the marketing world of real estate. This is kind of the storytelling approach I'm trying to deploy in commercial, in the work that I do in commercial. That's why, like you know, like my partnership with Bernadette, for example, I really try to just focus on the creativity, the story, and then Bernadette will sell the hell out of the place. You know, like, my goal is like to arm her with the best materials possible. Like, when we're selling an art gallery, I'm like, I feel this need to embrace what this place is, show a great picture of someone walking in the actual gallery. Like,
That's a cool photo.
It gives a sense of what it's like to be there, to be inside the space. You know, like, that to me it's different. You know, it's, and I think more people should trust their taste and their vision. Again, there's no formula here. It's not binary. Like, the next home you walk into to market, you should look at it and you should let your mind wander a little bit.
Have you ever seen my Once Upon a Time video?
I don't think so.
The Once Upon a Time, there was a girl in New York City.
Oh, yes. I did see that video.
Okay. So I love that. Like,
yeah, that's very unique to you. That's very authentic to you and your personality.
But like, I agree with you tenfold on the storytelling element. And I think that's where so many people miss the mark. And you can have a traditional listing video, but when you add an element of storytelling, even the hook of it, instead of saying, hi, I'm Madison Sutton from Sirhan, this is 1 John Street, you can say, have you ever wanted to live in a penthouse in Fide-Eye with the city hustling and bustling, and views further than you can imagine.
Yeah.
And then people are like, and then you go, welcome to 1 John Street.
Yeah. You're taking them there.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. You're helping them visualize that home.
Did you have a background in video before? 'Cause you've mentioned editing.
Yeah. So
okay.
in 2016, I started vlogging. So this was like the moment in time in my career, about 5 or 6 years in, that I was like struggling to stay inspired. Mm-hmm. I've always been a creative, and, you know, in my world, taking on various creative hobbies. And it's something I like never knew about myself. Like I never realized about myself. Like I taught myself how to play music. I taught myself how to cook. Like I've got, and every time I go into one of these worlds, I go really, really deep into it. Like I almost drown in it. Like in COVID, I just took up making bread. And by the time I was done, it was like my bread was the best bread I ever tasted. Like it became that good, really. And I really don't say that arrogantly. I say that truthfully. So like in 2016, I started messing with video a little bit. I went on a couple of vacations and just like documented them. I really fell in love with Casey Neistat and other like, you know, big YouTube vloggers like Jesse Wellens and David Dobrik, like, you know, and melding those work. Like I just found it so fascinating what they were doing. You know, like for me, like David Dobrik's videos are so hilarious, but like my favorite part of them is that the laughter is cut off in the middle of the laugh. Like and the cuts are made in the midst of laughter. The laughter never like, and that's how those videos move as fast as they do. You know, that's what keeps you engaged constantly, you know? So Casey Neistat was like my main inspiration. And, you know, it was like end of December, we're rolling into a new year, 2016. And I was like, you know what? Like, I'm just going to document my first week this year. And I used my phone. I documented the week. I sat in front of the camera, talked a little bit about the week. I put it into iMovie. I put the cuts together. I made it pretty raw and simple. Again, like document, don't create. That's a Gary Vee thing. Like focus less on trying to create something and more on just documenting and then like letting the pieces come together. And I put it together and then I showed it to my coach. Her name is Carmen Pucci. She's brilliant. I showed it to her. We were standing on the street in Fifth Avenue. I showed it to her my phone. I'm like, what do you think of this? And she goes, how long did it take you to make this? I said, well, I documented my week, and then it took me like an hour and a half to chop it together. And she goes, you need to do this. I'm like, what do you mean I need to do this? And she's like, you need to do this consistently, you know? And I was like, I really loved it. I enjoyed the finished product that came out of it. Like if I watched it today, I'm like disgusted by it. It's like the original, like the first loaf of bread I ever made. But she said to me, she's like, what kind of frequency do you think you can handle? I'm like, I think I could put out one of these a week. She said, okay, do it. Commit to 52. And that's what I did. So by the time I hit episode 7, I bought this camera and I bought tripods. I bought lights. I bought all this stuff. Now I have 3 of these. But yeah, and like this is the exact same setup that Casey Neistat used to work with. He used to shoot with a Canon 80D exclusively. And, you know, I just, you know, he was very inspiring to me. So I like, you know, modeled my work off of him. And I even used like some of his methods, like leading videos with time lapses or using time lapses to create forward motion in a story. But yeah, I was filming and editing everything myself. You know, I didn't have very much business going on at the time. So I just like went all in on this, you know, and my business exploded because of it. And these are not videos that are getting hundreds of thousands of views. Like my highest viewed video is around 250,000. And like, that's really a one-off. Like my videos were getting hundreds of views, but like my network was feeling fed by this content. And I, you know, because I was nourishing my network with this content, a lot of business was coming my way. And I was getting oddly and randomly recognized in the street by people. And I did those 52 episodes, and then I got really busy, and then I started doing less, and then I started doing less, and then I started doing less. And eventually it just became like, I'm going to do my own listing videos for every single listing I get. I started doing that. It started becoming like my main pitch strength. By showing this is before Sirhant, and this is before they started doing that. And actually, I have Ryan on my vlog in 2016 making fun of me for vlogging. Like, I have it on camera.
Wait, how long have you been with Ryan?
I've been with Ryan for like 2 years, but we've known each other a long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
He actually, so when I was about a year into the business,
Okay.
I made it a point to find him and to link up with him. And I did. I got in front of him and he invited me for like a ride in his car when he was going in between appointments, and we had a conversation, and then he took me to see one of his listings he was working on at the time. And, you know, just getting into the weeds of my business a little bit and getting his advice. So I've always considered Ryan to be a very inspiring figure, especially as it relates to his discipline. You know, I really consider him to be an anomaly in our world. So like, yeah, I'm a fan. I am a fan very much. But yeah, I've always kept up my love and passion for video. And this podcast, you know, it's not the first time I've done a podcast, but this is like my creative initiative, at least for this year, although people are already telling me I have to go beyond the 52 episodes that I committed to. So we'll see.
So you're doing one of these a week. This is like that. Interesting.
Yeah, but yours won't be released next week. I'm backlogged, you know, so like I started shooting in November. I backlogged 10 episodes going into the year. Now I'm backlogged by like 2 or 3. You know, there was a moment where it was like for 2 or 3 weeks, it was like 1 and 1. I was like in trouble. And then I was able to jam in a bunch of interviews. But yeah, this is what I love. It's a huge time investment, but I don't like feel comfortable surrendering that creativity to someone else. You know, like I love doing this, you know, and now I have someone who helps me with the editing, and they're brilliant. But it took me a long time to get comfortable with that, you know, and actually, you know, not to chew your ear off even more about this, but like eventually I reached a point where I sold Casey Neistat a home. Like I really like manifested that. Yeah. And then like I created a video which he saw and came to see this listing and then bought it like on the spot. And then we developed like a nice connection and a nice relationship. And that just like really, that was the moment in time that validated everything I'm doing. And it was him who told me, like, he asked me, do you edit all your own videos? I said, yes. He goes, me too. I'll never surrender that to anyone else. You know, a podcast is one thing, but I think like my vlog is something I'll always do myself.
So I also edit my own videos.
Nice.
So I completely get at that in the sense of no one really sees you like the way you want to see yourself. So whether it takes hearing the same phrase like 75 times, like the da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, there's something so beautiful about editing. And I think
that's where the story gets told. That's where the story comes together. Like you don't know what you're like. Shooting is one thing, but you don't really know what it's going to look like until you sit down and get into the edit, especially if it's like a film or something that like a documented week or something like that.
Oh, 100%.
You should be vlogging, honestly.
It's okay. So my journey with social media has been very up and down throughout the years. And I think that is not what people want to hear in a way. But at the same time, I do think it's what people want to hear, because I think, again, with this whole real estate, everything's good mentality that I see across social media all the time, people don't want to admit that, like, they kind of see me as a source in the space, as someone who can just like always do it. And some days I can't. Like, I just don't have the capacity. I'm drained. I've had a bad week.
Yeah. Consistency is the hardest thing.
It's so hard. Yeah. But the harder thing than consistency is not beating yourself up about it and thinking like, oh, we can like restart or XYZ, or like setting these goals.
You were creating though. You really were creating. Your videos were themed, they were planned, they were targeted. That's really hard to be consistent with. That's why documenting becomes a little bit easier, because if you were to document yourself throughout the week, working with Sirhan Commercial, working on your own stuff, doing your thing, and then at the end of that week on Saturday or Sunday, you put all those clips in chronological order and you move them into Final Cut or iMovie, they're all there in order. All you have to do is make the cuts and move the story into place. You know, it's a lot easier than people think it is. I think people are a lot more creative than they give themselves credit for.
I don't think that's difficult. I don't think that's the issue. I think it's the perception from posting things online. The worst thing I did, my biggest setback, which I still every day I work to overcome, is I started listening to people who hadn't done exactly what I wanted to do, So I had like all these really incredible people in real estate being like, oh, you shouldn't post stuff like that. You should do this. You should do that. And yes, were they incredible in real estate? Yes. Were they incredible in social media? No.
Yeah.
So essentially, like someone like Ryan is like my prime example in this. That's someone who I should just be listening to, following XYZ. But just kind of being a bit naive, not having a team lead in the space for the longest time, and really having no mentorship whatsoever. I had people, and I not at Sarhant, but I won't mention, where, sit me down and saying, like, you have a bikini picture here. Not like a scandalous one, like it's just me at the beach with like my sister. You can't have that. You can't do this. And I think as a woman, it's very different. And I think we want to think that's a totally equal playing field, but it's not. As a woman in this space, you will be more under a microscope when you, like, if I post something where my top's a little bit too low, I'm thinking about that like constantly.
Yeah.
And it's a really...
You're doing it consciously.
No. Like in the sense of there's almost so much thought and mental energy spent on, well, what if this picture or something, this is a picture I like of myself. I posted one where I was at the beach that my boyfriend took a few weeks ago, and I loved it. It was like he said something really beautiful. He randomly took my photo and he goes, "This is how I see you in my eyes." And I'm just so genuinely happy in that. The amount of shit I got for that picture of it being scandalous, this and this. And I'm like, I don't post stuff like that frequently. And even if I did, it's like a swimsuit. Like, you'll live. But like, those are the things that for every 5 people who say something to you, you have in the back of your mind, there's 15 people who think it.
Yeah.
So it's like a very delicate balance of being a woman in the space and wanting to feel beautiful and confident and proud of being a woman in this very difficult space, to being respectful and being mindful and then not wanting people to talk about you. And I think that's also an element of just me being young and feeling like this entire space is almost very high school-y. Like, you have your tiers, you have your teams, you have your cliques.
Yeah.
It's really hard to describe, but I don't know. It's just like a really interesting thing. And I think this affects, like, when I got off the stage in Australia, the amount of women who came up to me, and not even like women, I'd say, who are in like my phase of life or my age, it was a lot of moms. They go, I want to do what you do, but who wants to see me? I'm just a mom. And I was like, that's so heartbreaking, because, and I tried to speak on this at like a later panel and just do videos about this, like constantly after the event. I was pushing out this message so much because I got basically validation that this was happening to other women in our space, where they were like, who wants to see me? Why would a person want to see me? I'm just a mom who has 2 kids, or I'm a single mom, or I'm in my 50s, or I'm in this and that. And it was so heartbreaking, because the reasons that make you you, and these hardships or things in your life, those are the reasons your clients want to work with you. I mean, I have 2 dogs. That's great. But do I understand what it's like to have a 2-year-old and have a balcony? Absolutely not. Like, that sounds terrifying.
Yeah.
But you know who would understand that? Another mom.
Yes.
And they don't want to put themselves out there. And again, I got that constantly. The moment I got off the stage in Australia, I realized how Ryan must feel all the time. I called my boyfriend that night, almost crying, because I was so overwhelmed. Because every 5 feet I walked, someone wanted to speak to me. And we were also staying at this resort that was like a casino. And I just constantly ran into people. But again, it was 90% women saying, like, I wish people wanted to see me. And it's not I wish people wanted to see me, it's I wish I felt comfortable being seen.
Right.
In a space where I clearly don't feel appreciated being seen. Or someone in the past has made me feel that when I put out these personal elements in my life, they're not valued. Yeah. So it's like a very interesting thing to go about as like a young woman and who's still developing like her view on life and her view on her career and like rights and wrongs and XYZ and who I am.
Yeah, well, authenticity comes at a price.
It's tough, and it changes. And that's why I said, I change my look all the time because I don't know who I am yet.
Authenticity comes at a price.
Yeah.
It really does. It comes with a lot of judgment, and you have to be prepared for that, because that's always going to be there. There are always people that are going to judge you for the decisions you make on social and what you decide to display out to the world. But at the end of the day, if you're committed to being authentic to yourself, then you go with what you feel. You're not in the business of making everybody happy. It's impossible to do that to begin with.
Well,
Yeah.
I feel like I almost hated that I used the bikini photo as an example because I feel like that's such a stereotypical example. When I was interviewing for teams here, I had there's a video I have of me in Australia where I talk about how red lipstick makes me feel confident. It's my sunglasses, it's the red suit, it's my physical item.
Yeah, that's how I feel about putting a suit on.
Exactly, yeah. It's that. And this person interviewing me, they go, "One, you're so much more humble than I thought you'd be. I thought you were going to be like a real pain in the ass." And I'm like, "Thanks. Love that. Let's talk." And they ended up going into my social and they ended up saying, "I don't need someone who has to put on red lipstick to feel okay about themselves. If that's what you think you need to do to negotiate a deal, then like, I don't," and I'm just like, how did we get to this point?
What
Like,
the
it was
fuck?
this. No, this is like 100%.
This is a Sirhan agent telling you this? Wow, that's really shitty.
But that happens a lot. You get like, it's not as direct as that, but it's
Yeah.
like these little comments. That was literally about a piece that I spoke in front of 6,000 to 10,000 people on being authentic to themselves and them saying, "I don't think you need to put on red lipstick." And I'm like, okay, well, you totally missed the message of the piece.
But no,
But it's like that context,
I would say that you do need to put on red lipstick because that's where you feel not just confident, but that's what becomes happiness.
Yeah.
That's embracing yourself, the thing that makes you tick. That's how you fall in love with this work. And the only way to stay in it, really, for a long period of time, is to fall in love with it. And to do it in parallel with what you love. Do it how you love it. And sure, in a lot of instances, you will be limited to a specific audience. Doesn't mean you can't be successful.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Especially not in New York. So, again, you're not going to make everyone happy. I would say to you, embrace everything you have and let it all out. You'll know what works and what doesn't, and that's how you'll evolve. You're 27. You're very young. You've been in the business for 5 years. You've barely scratched the surface. So
I think that's like my biggest message is I literally posted a clip last week. A lot of people don't realize this, but I actually have a stutter, and I took speech therapy for 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I was pulled out of school every day. I took it, and there's so much like fear around, and everyone has their stutter, and there are going to be people who point it out. Most of the time people don't, because they don't notice it. But at the same time, there will be people who point out your stutter, point out that like fly hair and things like that, especially when it comes to like your overall message on social media. And I literally, am I allowed to swear here?
Of course.
Yeah. Okay.
Authenticity.
Well, it's funny because I talk about your why, and your why is the reason you work your ass off every day.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, like, I don't give a shit what John from The Office thinks about me. There's no John at The Office. I just want to make that clear. A very generic name.
Except for Johnny Shaughnessy. We like him a lot.
We do. He's my favorite John. Now that I think about it, there's several Johns at The Office.
There's a few Johns.
So yeah, we'll pretend. But I don't care what that person thinks of me in the sense of like how I do my business. And I wouldn't let them control any other element of my entire life. So like, why would I let them? And this is the message I push the, other women very specifically. A lot of my following's women. Why would you let that person who's not going to impact your finances, your quality of life, your relationships in a positive way, prevent you from pursuing the best path, which is usually social media, like in my message. And at the end of the day, I say like, they're going to like, it sucks. People are going to talk shit about you. They're going to do that whether you are buttoned up, whether you're all out, whether you're quiet, whether you're loud and boisterous, and however the situation may be, people will talk shit. People, like, you're not going to rub everyone the right way. I'm from the South. You can't be everyone's cup of tea. But fuck them.
Exactly.
Because they're not paying your bills.
No, they're not.
No. I wish they were, but they're not. And they're not running your business. So.
You're absolutely right. Absolutely right.
I'm a bit of a rambler. Sorry about that.
No, that's totally fine. Why don't we kind of finish with this?
Yes.
Because you just touched on this, but what is your why? How do you define your why?
So ironically, my why is a lot about, my why is a lot of what we talked about. my why is not only generational wealth for my family and creating. My parents worked their ass off. I'm one of 6 kids, 5 of whom are adopted from Ukraine or Russia. I'm the only biological. They sacrificed everything to give as many children possible a quality of life that they could not have. My goal in life is to continue that message of kindness and compassion and helping those who are less fortunate while also being selfish. I want to be selfish. And so my why is also this form of self-preservation and wanting to know that I can fall asleep at night, knowing I worked my ass off. I did everything possible to hit my goal. My goal is agnostic in this situation. My goal will change. My goal will always change. It might be to own a penthouse on Park Ave. It might be a single family in Brooklyn. It might be,
that's arbitrary.
Ayahuasca in Peru. Who knows? But it's knowing that I'm doing everything in my power to help those who have helped me and to continue, whether my message in life, all I know is it's very love-based. I want to continue a flow of love, and in this world, it's heavily financially oriented. But it's to be able to continue that and to feel freedom and peace of mind. So that's why I do. I work so I can financially do the things I want. I work so I can learn. I work so I can help others. But I work for a sense of freedom and peace as well.
I love it. I'm trying to grab the why out of what you just said.
Yeah.
To me, I think the question you answered is, what's your mission and what's your vision? But the why, what I want to understand is, what's the thing that keeps you moving? What is the thing that makes a real impact in your life and in your work? Why are you doing this? Why are you in real estate? What keeps you in it?
It's interesting because real estate and life are very different for me. I love people. And I've talked about this before. The most beautiful moment for me, as someone from the South, I came to New York City in 2016 for a trip. I took a picture in Times Square, and I said, maybe New York City will be my home someday.
And you never left.
No, I did, actually. I left, and then a few years later, I came back for a 2-week vacation. That I didn't leave from. I sublet my place in LA and everything. But there was just this and the reason I'm also happy that I didn't have a team lead or a mentor, I feel like I'm not jaded in the industry. I feel like I don't know how everything works 100%, but that allows me to view a situation. Problem solving is by far my biggest skill set, is I'm very, very good at problem solving. But when you don't have all these preconceived notions about a problem to solve, you view it with like just these beautifully open eyes and being like, why can't it work like that? And then people are like, well, shit, like, why can't it work like that? Like, it shouldn't, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But so...
Then it sounds to me like your why is continued enlightenment. It's like being enlightened every day.
But, and I'll be quick with this, but it's also a part of that Hallmark story where it's the relationships with people. Again, I work so heavily with women. It's giving them opportunity. It's like connecting and being like, oh, you're a woman in this spot. I'm a woman in this spot. Great, let's connect. And it's literally the cheesiest thing, but it's dropping the keys into their hand, knowing that I may not be a main character in their story. I may never see them again, but I help them write a chapter. And that's like so beautiful to me. And just kind of like the light in people's eyes when they move in, especially the same people that I was 5 or 6 years, the same person I was 5 or 6 years ago when I would have done anything in the world to live in New York City. I get to help people start that journey. And that is so cool to me. That's like the coolest thing on this planet. And then I get to see them 5 years later when they're engaged. Yeah. And then 5 years later when they're married. And
that comes back to connection.
It's so cool. It's like the coolest thing ever. You have so many cool people here. Yeah.
Authenticity in its purest form. Madison Sutton. You definitely embody that. And this was a pleasure. Cheers to you. Thank you for being here.
Cheers to you.
This was fun. Cool.
Oh, sorry. I'm a bit of a rambler.
Well, that's what this is for.